Intelligence media and litigation analyst. Coming up, we'll break down corporate earnings at the retailers Kohl's and Abercrombie & Fitch. You're listening to Bloomberg Intelligence on Bloomberg Radio, providing in-depth research and data on 2,000 companies and 100 industries. You can access Bloomberg Intelligence through BI Go on the terminal.
We're live.
I'm Paul Sweeney, and this is Bloomberg. This is New York's only 24-hour source for world markets and breaking business news. Bloomberg 1130. Coming up, the latest market-moving headlines from Bloomberg. First, an update.
Why does this thing log me out every single time?
President Trump says everyone should consider the airspace over Venezuela closed. He says it's to deter drug and human traffickers. BBC's David Harper.
The United States does not have the authority to close some of the country's airspace, but Mr. Trump's post could deter airlines from operating there.
Negotiations on Ukraine are planned this week in Washington and Moscow. Correspondent Weijia Jiang says first.
CBS News has learned that Secretary of State Marco Rubio and other U.S. delegates will meet with Ukrainian officials here in Florida on Sunday.
The radar shows a huge blanket of snow over much of the upper Midwest. Weather Prediction Center meteorologist David Ross.
Some areas have had up to a foot of snow into tomorrow evening, particularly near Davenport and Moline, part of Quad Cities of Iowa and Illinois. They're forecast to have 14 inches.
That storm now stretches into western New York and western Pennsylvania. CBS News Brief. I'm Peter King. And I'm Ed Pileggi in the Bloomberg. Here are some of the stories.
Oh, yeah. Look at that. We're live again. Live?
According to a key data provider, a sign that U.S. consumers are continuing to spend despite persistent economic concerns. Retail sales, excluding autos, increased 4.1% on the day after Thanksgiving, this according to data from MasterCard Spending Pulse. That surpasses last year's 3.4% growth. The figures, which are not adjusted for inflation, draw from both online and in-person purchases to give a broad view of economic activity. The data shows U.S. shoppers' resilience amid higher costs and job market concerns. To appeal to price-sensitive consumers, retailers are offering discounts on a wide range of goods, although the promotions may not be quite as deep as in past years. It's Small Business Saturday, and restaurants in Texas are urging customers in cash. Bloomberg's Monica Ricks explains why.
They're not resilient. They're just stupid. Americans love spending money they don't have. That's why they're buying everything on credit. They're using their credit cards to purchase everything. Buy now, pay later. Oh, like idiots.
Bloomberg Radio.
Sergey Brin gave away more than $1.1 billion worth of Alphabet stock this week, with most of the money going to a nonprofit the Google co-founder created. A donation was disclosed Friday in a regulatory filing, which did not specify who had received the more than 3.5 million shares. According to a spokesperson for Brin's family office, roughly $1 billion in stock is going to Catalyst 4. Brin is also giving about $90 million to his family foundation, as well as $45 million to the Michael J. Fox Foundation.
We got the baby shark complaint department. You hear that, Jibu?
American history and what's missing from our political lives today. And Burns still thinks America is perfectible. You can read all about it in Bloomberg's Weekend Edition, exploring the places where finance, life, and culture meet. Find it on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. Global news, 24 hours a day, and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Ed Pileggi. This is Bloomberg. For 22 years, Bloomberg surveillance has been about conversation. Ed Morse of Hartree Partners.
What's your target on oil?
I think it gets to 45 over exuberance once it crashes through that $50 number. Jeff DeGraff of Renaissance Macro Research. How do you define a bubble? If an asset doubles in 2 years, you're in bubble territory. Bloomberg surveillance. Weekday mornings at 7. We've got two of the smartest people on the planet.
Listen at the FOMC meeting ending December 10th, 2025. At IBKR forecast trader, the yes was recently at 23%, and the no is at 75%. With Interactive Brokers forecast contracts, you can trade on future events like climate, the economy, or politics. Pick yes or no, and if you're right, you earn $1. Forecast contracts are not suitable for all investors. Make your prediction. Go to ibkr.com/ and start predicting today. Last trading day for this contract is December 10th.
Get the news you need to start your day in just 15 minutes. Wake up with Bloomberg Daybreak U.S. Edition. Subscribe today on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts.
Bloomberg Weather is brought to you by Unbound.org. Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice. Continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at Unbound.org.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Clear into the evening hours.
I said we have a complaint department. A complaint department. Are you hearing the words that are coming out of my mouth? The complaint department is the Baby Shark Complaint Department. That's what it's called. Baby Shark Complaint Department. Have you ever heard of it?
On the latest edition of the Bloomberg Business Week Daily Podcast.
Jibu, where are you, Jibu?
Lecturer in political science at Columbia University on why U.S. efforts to end the war in Ukraine aren't swaying Moscow. Putin wants Ukraine to still be in the neighborhood of Russia and a close ally of
Yeah, we have a Baby Shark Complaint Department.
It doesn't mean a member of the EU or NATO or a democracy or an ally of the U.S. So keeping the West out of Ukraine is the goal. And then there's this personal element as well. Personal oligarchic.
I still can't believe that all these Black Friday shoppers that have been shopping online have been paying with their credit cards with money that they don't even have. They've been buying gifts and all kinds of stuff with money they don't even have. And then they complain how they never have any money. I wonder why they don't have any money. Oh, yeah.
And used as just pawns and trades that Russia has political prisoners. We see lack of any kind of diplomacy with regard to other.
If you're too stupid to realize that you're buying stuff with money you don't have, you should not complain about being.
Russia, and it doesn't look like a kind of peace agreement is going to change some of those underlying issues.
You should not complain about being broke.
Of the Bloomberg Business Week Daily podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Plus, listen anytime on the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com. The digital economy never sleeps, and neither do the threats against it. Join Bloomberg in New York or online December 8th for Bloomberg Tech Presents, Defending the Digital Economy. Hear from industry leaders, security experts, and innovators as they uncover real-time strategies to protect critical assets and shape the future of cybersecurity. Register now at BloombergLive.com/defending digital economy. This event is proudly sponsored by MasterCard.
Now, a sports update on Bloomberg 1130.
Approaching the end of the first period from the Prudential Center, Devils have tied it up with the Flyers at 1. New Jersey on a back-to-back after beating Buffalo. The Rangers weren't as fortunate, falling 4-1 to Tampa Bay at Madison Square Garden. It was a back-to-back for the Blue Shirts, too. Nets in Milwaukee in 20 minutes. College football, Penn State beats Rutgers. Ohio State takes down Michigan for the first time since 2019. And Syracuse falls to BC. That's your Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Rob Bushka.
I'm Elton John. When he was just 13, my friend Ryan White was diagnosed with AIDS. This was 40 years ago. At the time, he was shunned and threatened by his community, yet his grace and determination to help change the world for himself and all those infected with HIV was an
Uh-oh, you're falling asleep. I can tell. I lick my finger, I put it up in the air, and I can tell you're starting to fall asleep.
Learn more at EltonJohnAIDSfoundation.org. Follow us at EJF on Instagram. With the Bloomberg Small Business Report, I'm John Tucker. If innovation is part of your business model, you need
I can always.
credits a priority. The research and development tax credit is one.
You know, when you lick your finger and you put it up in the air and you use it like a radar?
Especially in technology, software, manufacturing, and biotech. If a company is creating new products or is developing technology, it may qualify.
These credits directly reduce the tax bill, and for early-stage companies with little or no income tax liability, they can be applied to payroll taxes, providing immediate cash flow relief. Qualifying activities don't need to be groundbreaking. They just have to be related to developing or improving a product, process, software, formula, technique, or invention, which is applicable to a wide range of products and services. A lot of company founders don't realize that they're eligible, and ignoring R&D credits could mean leaving potentially thousands of dollars unclaimed. And that's the Bloomberg Small Business Report.
This is Bloomberg Intelligence with Scarlett Fu and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
We move next to more earnings in the retail sector. This week we got third quarter earnings from Dick's Sporting Goods and Best Buy. Dick's Sporting Goods raised its outlook again. However, investors were disappointed by costs related to turning around the Foot Locker chain it recently acquired.
Separately, Best Buy raised its guidance for the current fiscal year as demand for the latest consumer tech drove revenue and profit last quarter.
For more on this, we were joined by Lindsay Dutch, Bloomberg Intelligence Consumer Hardline Senior Analyst. Let's start with Dick's Sporting Goods. They raised their outlook again, but I guess investors are focused on, some of the costs trying to turn around Foot Locker. Talk to us about Dick's Sporting Goods, Lindsay.
The legacy business remained very strong in the third quarter, strong back to school, clear demand momentum heading into the fourth quarter. That's where the raised outlook came. It was really for the legacy business. But when we look at Foot Locker, the deal closed early September. The outlook for the fourth quarter is mid to high single digit same-store sales decline. Dick's is also looking to expedite the turnaround there, which means offloading old inventory, steep markdowns in that fourth quarter, which is going to really hurt the margin as well. So Foot Locker, needs a lot of work. Fourth quarter is going to be weak, and investors are really looking to see how quickly they can turn that business around.
Yeah, and probably they'll need to put some money into it as well to reorganize stores and freshen up the display. How much of this deal, Dick's buying Foot Locker, was predicated on Nike and what it was doing with this shift back to its wholesale channels and away from solely relying on its direct-to-consumer offerings and its own stores?
So Foot Locker was, I would argue, overexposed to Nike, several years ago. They had been working that exposure down. I think Dick's will remain focused on being diversified, just given that their own assortment, where they're leaning into lots of other brands, new up-and-coming brands like Hoka and On. They did discuss, though, that Foot Locker will sort of remain sort of a hub for basketball, and Nike does have a strong hold in the basketball market. So I expect Nike to be, a strong vendor with Foot Locker. But Dick's is looking to make sure that they have that right assortment, the newest stuff, the hottest lines coming from Nike and others.
What is Dick saying about tariffs?
This is not a good time for me to be getting my viewers. My viewers come in later on at midnight.
Half of the year and even into next year. Since the pandemic, since they've been able to see sort of an increase in demand for their premium assortment, they're not really
This is a bad time for my viewers.
They like to sell their product fully through. So I don't expect them to sort of discount, and they have taken prices up selectively, but certainly not across the board. And they're hiring from consumers sort of accepting those increases. I think Foot Locker is a little bit of a different story, and you might see that impact a little bit bigger on that business just because they don't have those premium products, and they're already going to need to offload older inventory with steep discounts. So you sort of have that turnaround compounded with these rising costs heading into the next year. So something for them to work on.
Lindsay, I also want to ask about Best Buy. Consumer electronics retailer had a beat and raise quarter. It looks pretty good, and it looks like it's on the usual strengths, sales of mobile phones and sales of computer equipment.
Yeah, so Best Buy had a strong third quarter, better than expected, as you mentioned. I think, the stock isn't getting a full bump because there is definitely some conservatism and a low guide for the fourth quarter, and investors are trying to figure out, is it just conservatism? Are they just worried about the consumer, or is there something really there that there's going to be a slowdown in that fourth quarter? But the business looks good. Demand looks strong. As you mentioned, computing, phones, gaming, all looking solid. And they're also seeing an improvement in home theater, which is really big because that has been a weaker category for the last couple of years. So if that comes to fruition, I definitely think there will be strength in the fourth quarter.
So you think about a Best Buy, I mean, some of those are big ticket items here, and that would suggest that they go to a part of the K-shaped economy maybe that is doing better. Is that a typical Best Buy customer?
So Best Buy, definitely promotions are going to be a big piece of the fourth quarter. They're sort of leaning into those promotional events. That's what worked last year, and I think they're trying to lean into the things that worked last year for this year. And I do think the consumer backdrop is quite similar when we do that compare. They also recently launched a marketplace, and they seem to have a stronger focus on marketing and advertising. And so they're really trying to meet the consumer where they are and make sure that Best Buy is top of mind when you're shopping for a wide array of things, not just those big ticket items like TVs or appliances. So they're trying to have a bigger wallet share with consumers across the board, and they're leaning on that marketplace and advertising to do it, and then hopefully get you into the store, and that's where they can bring their customer service and experience as well.
That was Lindsay Dutch, Bloomberg Intelligence Consumer Hardlines Senior Analyst.
We move next to the travel and leisure sector. We recently took a look at a survey from Bloomberg Intelligence entitled Consumers Maintain Vacation Budgets in 2026.
According to the survey, over two-thirds of respondents to BI's proprietary travel survey said that they will spend more to go places in 2026, about the same as last year. And this comes even with rising economic concerns.
For more on this, we were joined by Jody Lurie, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Credit Analyst. We first asked Jody to break down what she learned from BI's survey.
So we do the survey every half a year, and so we just got the results out for the most recent one. And what's interesting is that we're seeing more people planning on keeping their budgets the same. But what's more interesting is that if costs exceed budgets, fewer people than last year, so they've increased their budgets. And that's on the back of them knowing that inflation is a much higher risk for them, for their portfolio.
So in other words, people are making room for time off, but they're going to have to scrimp more in order to make it happen because their money is not going to take them as far as it used to.
Correct. And Scarlett, I mean, I think to piggyback on that, if you look, the eating out anticipation of spending is higher this year than last year, and I think that's less a reflection of people wanting to eat out, but more that they're expecting eating out is going to be more expensive. And so even though we're seeing people want to spend on paid activities and experiences, which could bode well for the cruise lines and the theme parks, at the end of the day, when costs exceed budgets, more people this year over last year are planning on cutting and looking at free options. So going to the free museums, going to low-cost options.
Well, now that the government is open, DC is an option once again. How about in terms of destination? Maybe staying closer to home, maybe not going quite as far internationally?
Yes, and staying closer to home is very, very much key. If we see the data, the international trend is to Canada. Canada bumped up to the second spot. So we saw that in the mid-year, and it was pretty curious for us, particularly because when you look at it the opposite way, and we did this analysis a few months ago, Canada is not coming to the U.S. They don't want to come to the U.S. It's too expensive for them. They don't really like the current government situation. And on top of it, I think they're scared about crossing the border and what it means for immigration. So we're seeing Canadians not come to the U.S., and we're seeing a lot of companies comment on that. But we are seeing a lot of Americans go to Canada, and I am curious how much, and this is going to come in further reports, how much of the Canada move is a reflection of the World Cup next year. There's a lot of people going to Vancouver, for instance, for the World Cup. I'll actually be there during the World Cup, but not going to the World Cup.
Why?
We
might
be doing a very family-friendly cruise to Alaska.
Nice.
Yeah, just worked out that that's around the same time as the World Cup.
It was that time.
All right. Talk to me. This is when I go to Aruba. We go to an all-inclusive. How come I didn't know about this all-inclusive thing when I had 4 little kids?
I mean, were they a thing back then?
I don't know, but I mean, I would get the bill, which would be 5 inches thick, with like smoothies and chicken fingers and all that kind of crap that they eat throughout the day. And 4 kids. Man, if I knew about the all-inclusive, that would have been a savior for me. What are people doing when are they willing to still pay up for travel? Because I still hear people going to Europe and stuff like that. I mean, they're not going to Poughkeepsie; they're going to Paris.
Yeah, I mean, Japan is certainly a popular destination. Strong dollar there. Yeah, very much increased. Italy has increased. We're seeing among the upper income level, Portugal and Spain as popular destinations. And I think probably what's even more interesting is onboard spending for cruises is still continuing to have momentum at the moment. I think where we're watching is when that onboard spending shifts, and then the cruise lines, for example, don't get that gravy for cash flow. And to your point, Paul, I mean, even though you have something called all-inclusive, even though you have the cruise lines that they all are considered these package deals, what every company is doing, and we're talking the rental car companies, Avis is doing this too, obviously the airlines, is they're all doing these premium products, you do different tiers of products, so the add-ons, so you can get the base level, which is really the skeleton package, but anyone from cruise lines to theme parks to some extent, to the all-inclusives, the airlines, to the rental car companies are all segmenting to give, the lower-income consumer the ability to say that they traveled, and the higher-income consumer the ability to travel luxury.
And in terms of the add-ons, what are these add-ons? Are they, things that they used to offer for free and now charge you for?
For some of it is. So, a good example I have is, anecdotally, I know that some of the cruise lines that used to not charge to get people into the center of the city, say in Europe, you're on a European cruise, they used to get that for free. Now they say, no, you have to be a part of one of our, expeditions, one of our excursions in order to get that for free. Otherwise, we charge you $20 to get into the center of town in Czechoslovakia, not Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic.
Our thanks to Jody Laurie, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Credit Analyst.
That's this week's edition of Bloomberg Intelligence on Bloomberg Radio, providing in-depth research and data on 2,000 companies and 130 industries.
And remember, you can access Bloomberg Intelligence via VI Go on the terminal. I'm Scarlett Phil.
And I'm Paul Sweeney. Stay with us. Today's top stories and global business headlines are coming up right now.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is WBBR New York, Bloomberg 1130. Coming up, the latest market-moving headlines from Bloomberg. First, an update from our partners at CBS News.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Progressive Insurance. I'm Peter King. President Trump had hoped to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine by Thanksgiving. That didn't happen, of course, but a flurry of activity indicates it could be near, with meetings and negotiations planned tomorrow in Florida, then Moscow and Washington later in the week. Ukrainians are worried about what they'll have to give up after nearly 4 years of fighting. More from CBS's Elizabeth Palmer.
Grieving families are struggling to accept that a ceasefire will mean handing over a large chunk of Ukraine to Russia. Ola Kaczmarek, who lost her son, is resigned. I understand that my son died fighting for that man, she says, and now they just want to give it away.
Ukrainian officials say Russian attacks are continuing, with a drone killing at least one person tonight near Kyiv. President Trump claims to have shut down airspace over Venezuela, part of his strategy to end drug and human trafficking from there. CBS News White House correspondent Weijia Jiang is with the president in South Florida.
Amid the increase in operations at a naval base in Puerto Rico, President Trump posted, "Please consider the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed in its entirety." While the U.S. can't unilaterally close another country's airspace, the Federal Aviation Administration has been warning airlines for weeks to avoid the area due to increased military activity.
The vigil is being held tonight for 2 National Guard members who were shot Wednesday in Washington. The Guard now has backup in the nation's capital. More on that from CBS's Jerika Duncan.
They've been joined on patrol by D.C. police and other local law enforcement. The move comes after Wednesday's attack that killed one National Guard member and critically wounded another. The suspect, a 29-year-old Afghan national, faces murder charges.
And he's still hospitalized and on a ventilator. Black Friday shoppers have set a spending record up more than 9% from last year to nearly $12 billion. Retail Next says Friday's in-store traffic fell more than 3.5% from last year. From KNX Los Angeles, Natalie Davidian has a look at today's Small Business Saturday.
Shoppers I spoke with say small stores offer something big retailers can't.
Definitely more unique stuff you don't see other people wearing.
And for business owners, days like this are critical.
I think I have a lot of really great local, loyal customers, so they're definitely here to support through this time because it's been a tough year.
Nationally, the SBA says small businesses employ nearly half the private workforce, and many expect today alone to bring in almost 20% of their yearly revenue.
This is CBS News. Sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Take the next step forward in your career with great benefits at an award-winning workplace. Apply at careers.progressive.com.
A KFC tale in the pursuit of flavor. The holidays were tricky for the Colonel. He loved people, but he also loved peace and quiet. So he cooked up KFC's $4.99 chicken pot pie. Warm, flaky, with savory sauce and vegetables. It's a tender chicken-filled excuse to get some time to yourself and step away from decking the halls. Whatever that means. The Colonel lived, so we could chicken. KFC's chicken pot pie. The best $4.99 you'll spend this season.
Prices and participation may vary. Also by flat. Fees extra. Selling your home, it's one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make. You could go it alone, try to navigate market trends, determine fair pricing, and tackle tricky negotiations on your own. You could second guess every decision, wondering if you're doing it right. Then there's the showings, the offers, and the mountain of paperwork. Or you could work with the expertise of a realtor, here to guide and help protect as you make your next big move. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors. Right by you. A battle is forming between people making THC-infused drinks and snacks and the federal government with a national ban apparently coming.
Want to relax after work?
You may have seen the ads.
Click on the mood you want to feel and then go for it.
Yes, 50 milligrams.
In 2018, Congress legalized cultivation of industrial hemp, part of the cannabis plant family with marijuana. The law had a loophole on THC, the active ingredient in marijuana, a loophole leading to legal beverages and snacks with enough THC to get you high.
Click here for 20% off your first order.
But the bill that ended the government shutdown has a provision to ban this. The $24 billion industry is now scrambling to save itself before it takes effect a year from now. Michael Toscano, CBS News, Washington. College football fans are still waiting to find out where Mississippi coach Lane Kiffin will wind up after a winning tenure there. Several schools want to hire him. Kiffin has said he was going to decide today. So far, no word. Peter King, CBS News. And I'm Nick Pileggi in the Bloomberg Newsroom. Here are some of the stories we're watching. Sales on Black Friday rose from a year earlier, according to a key data provider, a sign that U.S. consumers are continuing to spend despite persistent economic concerns. Retail sales, excluding autos, increased 4.1% on the day after Thanksgiving, according to data from MasterCard Spending Pulse. That surpasses last year's 3.4% growth. The figures, which are not adjusted for inflation, drop from both online and in-person purchases to give a broad view of economic activity. The data shows U.S. shoppers' resilience amid higher costs and job market concerns. To appeal to price-sensitive consumers, retailers are offering discounts on a wide range of goods, although the promotions may not be quite as deep as in past years. Travel also seems to be a major driver of discounts this week. The points guy, Clint Henderson, talked to Bloomberg about it.
Pretty much every single airline has a Black Friday sale on right now or is planning one for Travel Tuesday, Cyber Monday next week. It's a great time to shop for travel, especially if you have some spring break trips. That can be really expensive. Singapore Airlines, Aer Lingus, American Airlines launched a huge sale today, and then all the hotels.
He says some popular destinations include New York, Las Vegas, and Japan. If kids' toys are on your holiday shopping list, you might want to buy now before they potentially run out. Bloomberg's Denise Pellegrini explains why.
One of the nation's leading supply chain experts is warning of a far thinner toy selection this holiday shopping season. Jason Miller, professor at the University of Michigan, says shipments of things like bikes, dolls, and puzzles from China are down sharply compared to last year. He blames the Trump administration having slapped 22% tariffs on the goods. On top of the apparent drop in selection, prices may be higher this year. And while some analysts say prices on gifts may drop as we get closer to the actual holidays, it's not clear which toys would still be available then. Denise Pellegrini, Bloomberg Radio.
The American Revolution filmmaker talks about the hypocrisies of American history and what's missing from our political lives today. Ken Burns still thinks America is perfectible. You can read all about it in Bloomberg's Weekend Edition, exploring the places where finance, life, and culture meet. Find it on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. Global news, 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Ed Kalegi. This is Bloomberg.
Now, a sports update on Bloomberg 1130.
Devils are being tested at the end of one. They're tied at one with Philadelphia. New Jersey's yet to lose in regulation at home this year. Rangers pounded on a back-to-back 4-1 by the Lightning downtown. NBA Brooklyn off and running in Milwaukee. In college football, Rutgers edged by Penn State. Ohio State cruised at Michigan to stay undefeated, setting up a matchup with undefeated Indiana next week. And Syracuse lost their season finale to BC. That's your Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Rob Bushka.
This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily, reporting from the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead with insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Nasser and Tim Stenevec on Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the weekend edition of Bloomberg Business Week. We are normally so focused on bringing you everything from Wall Street and politics and anything from the world of business that we're always grateful when we can take a step back and focus on other important issues, especially on this Thanksgiving weekend.
In this hour, we bring you to Boston and to the work that's being done at the Boston Children's Hospital. It's really a healthcare hub for all of New England. It's at the forefront of medical research and treatment, and that includes cutting-edge tech for orthopedic surgery and also using AI in medicine.
That's all coming up in the first hour. It's some really great conversations. Tim and I were both blown away by our visit there. Then coming up in our second hour, well, it's a little bit of a holiday special. We've got some travel, hosting, and drinks. We also get an update on the domestic travel market with the CEO of Travel and Leisure.
Plus, a CEO who you can count on to be candid when she stops by. Christina Stembel, the founder and CEO of Farm Girl Flowers, she joined us on getting ready for the holiday season and the health of the consumer.
Also, we have a drink with the CEO of the spirits company Costco at a time when the industry is facing a lot of headwinds. That's coming up.
A drink or two. I saw the way you poured that.
All right, all that's coming up in the second hour, too.
All that to come. First, though, we head to Boston Children's Hospital. It's the leading recipient of pediatric research funding from the National Institutes of Health. It's also the primary pediatric teaching hospital for Harvard Medical School.
We're so grateful to them for hosting us. And first up, we've got a conversation around medical advancements using artificial intelligence and the importance of providing a comforting environment for patients and staff alike.
That's what Dr. Joan LaRovere is trying to achieve. She's Senior Vice President. She's also Interim Chief Medical Officer of Boston Children's. She's also the co-founder and president of the NGO, the Virtue Foundation. It's delivering healthcare to over 25 countries. We began our conversation with the description of the room where we broadcasted from earlier this month.
We're in the Hale Roof Garden on the 10th floor of the Hale building. We need spaces like this for families to be able to step away and really, think and decompress. And for staff, these are very challenging, complex patients that we're taking care of in this building. Our neonatal intensive care unit is here. Our cardiac ICU is here. We have operating rooms in this building. It's wonderful that we can have these magical spaces where you can just feel that you're in a pediatric hospital and there's a place to relax and think.
Can I just say, it's like you're sitting on like a tree bench. There's there's a rainbow. It feels like above us. It's pretty cool.
Well, Carol mentioned the energy that we feel when we walk into a space such as Boston Children's, and we're reminded that it's not just a teaching hospital, a research hospital. It's also a place that treats kids from really all over the world. I'm wondering how you prioritize where resources go, whether it goes to treating patients right now versus thinking about research, thinking about development, thinking about ways to actually help patients in the future versus working with them right now? How do you allocate those resources?
Well, that has always been part of the DNA of Boston Children's Hospital. It's been our mission. We deliver the highest, best quality clinical care. Really, that is the foundation of it all. And you see that, the motto, where the world comes for answers. There's a lot of complex patients, and I think that's really where we thrive. And the other piece of our DNA is the science. We, as you talked in the beginning,
that makes a difference, right? When there's science involved, I feel like it's practitioners. Yes, you're dealing with patients, but it's people who are like, I want to understand how this works.
That's everybody here.
Yeah.
That's the doctors, that's the nurses, that's the social workers, that's the physical therapists, that's the respiratory therapists, it's the pharmacists. I just could keep going. So I think that's what draws people to work here and to stay here, because that purpose, that we're going to actually change things, and we're going to be able to find newer ways of doing things. We're going to help more children survive, but also thrive. And that takes a real concerted effort. And you need the science here, but it's clinical.
One of the things I think when you joined Tim and I back in New York, and listen, everybody's talking about AI, and I know that. But I think we all are thinking about what it could do for medicine and R&D and innovation. And I guess what we're trying to understand too is what's the reality of what AI is used within the medical community or R&D specifically? Like, where is it today? And you as someone who understands this space so well, and I'm curious the conversations you guys have, where do you think it could go?
Well, AI has been a very important part of Boston Children's Hospital for a long time. This isn't something new. We have incredible research groups and an incredible innovation team here who've been really standing up at AI initiatives for a very long time. We talked about some of the work I personally have done in terms of, Virtue Foundation and the global health AI mapping and being able to match resource and need.
You work with?
Yeah.
Firms, like specifically in AI.
Yes, the Databricks and Data Robot AI are building those real platforms that people can use. But I think about, for example, when ChatGPT first came out, we had Boston GPT. Immediately we were looking to get that behind our firewalls. How can we integrate that? How can we use that for real purpose in improving both the care that we give patients, but how can we use AI to also discover new things? I think the levels of data that we have, and I think you talked about in the beginning in terms of rare diseases, genetic diseases, we are the epicenter of that and have already been extremely successful in bringing new therapies to market for children. But when I look at the infrastructure that we're building, and I think you've had Dr. Wendy Chung come and speak, and she's heading up a lot of that work, I think our best days are ahead of us. And AI is unlocking that type of potential.
That was Dr. Joan LaRobert, Senior Vice President and Interim Chief Medical Officer at Boston Children's Hospital.
And for those that are listening, you might want to just go to their website. You get an idea of how we started the conversation at Hale Roof Garden, because it was pretty spectacular, and we know it was pretty special to the kids that come to the hospital. Now, we know AI has been the talk of the year. Actually, it's been the talk of, is it almost 3 years already?
Yeah, it's really nuts.
It's nonstop. A lot of AI when it comes to moving markets, analyzing data, and automating simple tasks. But it may also impact neurosurgery in kids.
On that, we were joined by Dr. Lisa Baird, Director of Neurosurgical Oncology and co-director of the Brain Tumor Center at Boston Children's Hospital.
I take care of kids that have brain tumors. And it's
all ages,
yeah, from infants to really young adults, that all through childhood. And work with a phenomenal team here. Requires a huge team to take care of these kids. They're very complex diseases. And we work on all aspects of them. So active treatment, we do a lot of scientific research, we run clinical trials, we really support these kids not only through their therapeutic journey, but through survivorship and surveillance afterwards. So it's a long journey for them, and we really try to support them at every stage.
How are clinical trials involving children different than clinical trials involving other age populations?
Well, cancer in children is very, very different. The diseases are different. The implications are different, especially with brain tumors.
Why is that? Is it development because of where the brain is, or what?
Partially. I mean, we're dealing with patients that have developing brains. I mean, there are very different implications for that. But also the diagnoses vary quite a bit.
The common diseases we see in childhood brain cancer are very, very different than that in adult cancer, and they require different treatments. And the support, network needs to be different. We have to support these kids through developmental stages, through hormonal development, through cognitive development, emotional development. The family needs are different. And, the diseases require very specific therapies. One thing historically that has happened is because pediatric cancer has not been as well supported historically, we have had to extrapolate data and treatments from the adult world, and it just doesn't work.
I have a good friend, and the same thing. Her son went through it, and unfortunately, it didn't work out well. But when she started doing research, she realized there's just no money, no funding, and they actually started a foundation to kind of kids selling cookies and just to try and drum up money and interest and attention. And we talk about it with women, that R&D, you just don't see it as much, and it's getting slowly better. But with kids, why is it that it's lacked in terms of time and money and effort? Not here, obviously, but elsewhere.
Yeah, we definitely rely on philanthropy hugely to make advancements in the field. But I think, historically, the numbers are lower. The financial support from government has been different. It follows volume, as does industry. There's a complex reasons for that. But, there needs to be a shift in focus and more attention on specific pediatric treatments.
We are talking a lot about treatments, and it makes me wonder about if we understand what causes this stuff in the first place. And certainly treatments in recent years have gotten so much better, and gene therapy has gotten better. But I'm wondering if we have an understanding in the medical community about why some kids get sick and why some don't.
Yeah, there have been huge advancements in pediatric brain tumors. It's really one of the most exciting fields right now because of how many things have really moved forward in the field. And so we know so much more about the biology of these tumors and the genetic underpinnings to them, and can really drill down with each individual tumor to find out what the molecular change has been in the cells that's driving tumor growth. And it's really helped us understand them and opened up a whole new field of individual treatments. And so, every tumor is different. In some tumors, we've discovered that there may be a cell of origin that the child is born with. A lot of tumors, we don't understand why some people are getting them and some don't. Some may have familial implications and some may have environmental. We don't understand everything, but we know so much more about the individual genetics of the tumor.
Could we get to a point with times where there is some sort of screening for kids when they're born or in their early days that helps identify what they could be susceptible to, and then we could allow for different treatments ahead of that to prevent it actually from happening?
Definitely. I think so. And it may not be for every tumor, but I think we're already getting close to that for certain diagnoses where we know specific things that we can potentially screen for. And we're finding certain, germline mutations that are, familial, hereditary. I think we may get to that point where screening is better for all tumors, but we're very close for certain types of tumors.
Is there differences in boys and girls when it comes to either tumors or what impacts?
For some, yeah, for some diagnoses, and some have greater percentages with boys and some with girls. It really just depends on the diagnosis, and many it's equivalent.
Our thanks to Dr. Lisa Baird, Director of Neurosurgical Oncology, Co-Director of the Brain Tumor Center at Boston Children's Hospital.
Coming up, developing tools to better understand the infant brain, and the doctor who leads a 70-person neuroimaging and computational science center.
More from our conversation from Boston Children's Hospital next. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. This is Bloomberg.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Clear skies give way to increasing cloudiness overnight. Lows 35 to 40. Cloudy tomorrow with rain in the afternoon. Breezy highs of 45 to 50. Rain tomorrow night is be breezy 30 to 35. High pressure leads to sunshine on Monday. Highs near 40. Tuesday we'll see rain developing. Inland may be mixed with wet snow. Highs 45. I'm Rob Carolyn with your 3-day forecast on Bloomberg 1130. And I'm Ed Kalegi in the Bloomberg Newsroom. Here are some of the stories we're watching. Sales on Black Friday rose from a year
Oh, boy.
According to a key data provider, a sign that U.S. consumers
Oh,
are
yeah.
continuing to spend despite persistent economic concerns.
That's the way the cookie crumbles.
Autos increased 4.1% on the day after Thanksgiving, according to data from MasterCard Spending Pulse. That surpasses last year's 3.4% growth. The figures, which are not adjusted for inflation, draw from both online and in-person purchases to give a broad view of economic activity. The data shows U.S. shoppers' resilience amid higher costs and job market concerns. To appeal to price-sensitive consumers, retailers are offering discounts on a wide range of goods, although the promotions may not be quite as deep as in past years. President Trump wants airlines to steer clear of Venezuela. Bloomberg's Monica Ricks reports.
President Trump says airlines should consider airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed. He made the statement on Truth Social, addressing airlines, pilots, drug dealers, and human traffickers. It's a stark warning as American forces build their presence in the region, and Trump weighs potential action. Just last week, the New York Times reports Trump and President Nicolas Maduro spoke by phone to discuss a possible meeting, but never made plans. The U.S. has been intensifying pressure on the country for months, though, as part of an anti-drug trafficking operation the Trump administration says is being led by Maduro. Monica Ricks, Bloomberg Radio.
Airlines across the world race to keep their fleet running after a major software glitch forced an urgent update for Airbus's most widely flown aircraft, keeping disruptions and cancellations limited during a crucial holiday season. Software fix for the A320 jets issued by the European Union Aviation Safety Agency late Friday came after a recent incident involving a JetBlue airliner showed that intense solar radiation could corrupt data that helps maintain functioning flight controls. Airbus said more than 6,000 aircraft may be impacted by the glitch, over half of the global A320 fleet. The American Revolution filmmaker talks about the hypocrisies of American history and what's missing from our political lives today. Ken Burns still thinks America is perfectible. You can read all about it in Bloomberg's Weekend Edition. Global news 24 hours a day, and whatever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Ed Kalegi.
Yep, that's the way the cookie crumbles.
The Big Take, a daily podcast from Bloomberg and iHeartRadio, highlighting the best reported by Bloomberg News from around the globe.
The effects tariffs have had on the economy.
What does Trump really want from China?
The growing pains of a rapidly electrifying world. Each weekday, we dig into one important story and tell you why it matters.
How AI will transform our lives.
Israel has called for regime change. Listen to The Big Take on the iHeartRadio app, the Bloomberg Business app, or wherever you listen.
Defense is more complex than ever. As technology is adopted across nearly every facet of our lives, we need more advanced, more technologically savvy solutions.
That's Lise Augusto, Director of Research and Strategy at Global X ETFs. She recently toured an unmanned naval ship made by defense contractor Leidos. AI, robotics, and drones are reshaping the entire defense industry. Learn more at chartingdisruption.com.
Now, a sports update on Bloomberg 1130.
Devils have fallen behind 3-1 midway through the second period at home against Philadelphia. They're on a back-to-back like the Rangers, who were dropped 4-1 by Tampa Bay. NBA, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee. In Milwaukee in the early stages, Ryan Helsley didn't stick around long. The Mets rental reliever signs with the Orioles. College football, Rutgers beaten by Penn State. Syracuse dropped their finale to Boston College. That's your Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Rob Bushka.
This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Massif and Tim Stenevec on Bloomberg Radio.
Neurological development and research is so key, especially in children, because healthy brain development can influence outcomes for the rest of our lives.
Dr. Ellen Grant is Director of Fetal Neonatal Neuroimaging and Developmental Science at Boston Children's Hospital. There she leads a 70-person neuroimaging and computational science center that's working to develop tools to better detect and understand brain physiology and development. The goal? Improve cognitive, behavioral, and neurological outcomes in fetuses, infants, and toddlers. Brain imaging in children. If we have a better understanding of the brain and fetal development, and for babies and toddlers, what will that allow us to understand? What does it prevent? What does it treat?
Well, everything begins in utero, pretty much. So your life is an arc from infancy or when you're conceived through to adulthood. So the more we can understand their early development, the more we can start to understand how we make sure children are on the right trajectory. So the goal is to characterize brain development very early on. So we tell at the very earliest point when to start to deviate from a normal trajectory, back on track as early as possible. And ideally, we want in future to be able to prevent diseases from happening. Deal with them and try to correct them later on when the damage is partly done.
So how early can we do it today and detect that there's something wrong? How early, realistically, do you think we can get it to?
Yeah. We've started looking at about 11, 15 weeks, something around there at the earliest, right, closer to around 18 weeks. We start to characterize brain development, 18, 19 weeks or so. So it begins quite early when we start to see and look at early brain development.
Well, you and your team did a study a few years ago that gave you results to argue for earlier MRI during pregnancy.
Yeah.
Is that study enough to actually change the standard of care?
Well, we do use it early here at so when there's an indication, we do it as early as we can to better characterize the entire fetus, because it's not just the brain, it's the body it's attached to too. So we want to understand not just the brain development, but how that brain is developing in the context of the other organ systems. So we can do, because it doesn't necessarily run hand in hand, like it can be very different, right?
Or like in terms of what's going on with brain development versus the rest of the system, disconnect? No.
They're intimately connected. So there's one, So that's what we want to understand. So say, for example, we deal with a lot of congenital heart disease here. That has effects on brain development. We deal with congenital diaphragmatic hernias. That has effects on brain development. So everything that's happening in the fetus, whether it's brain or not, has the potential to have subtle effects on brain development.
Why do kids, kids do need specialized tools for brain imaging.
Yes.
Just about that one.
Yeah. That's the whole reason that I came. In children's is industry is not interested in fetuses, infants, and young children. So it's really hard to get devices that are built specifically for these age range. So that's why I brought a team of technical people. So they're engineers, physicists, computer scientists, data scientists that help to either develop the devices or come up with better ways to analyze the data that we get with an eye on trying to understand pediatric disorders. So, for example, we want to monitor, and we're developing optical devices for the NICU to monitor cerebral blood flow. But the heart rate of a neonate is 150. So we have to sample at a much higher rate than you would in an adult to get the same information. So we have to build specifically devices to the physiology. And then if you think of the head of a premature baby, it's very, very small. Right? So I can't take a probe that we use in adults and just put it on at preterm. So we have to develop the devices to fit the size of the infant.
I want to just go, and I feel like we touched on this earlier. We are Bloomberg Business Week. We are Bloomberg and very entrenched in financial markets. And I feel like the more I've been doing this, money just follows everything. Money is why people do things or don't do things. Is that really it? Is it just the market? I hate to even make it that way. The market size. And so you don't have medical equipment companies building the things because they just don't think the market size is big enough. That is a big problem.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're trying to get into more of a business perspective. Like if we do a small startup that starts to answer those questions, then a bigger company might buy it. But if we stay in the research realm, then it's sometimes really hard to go that last mile and get something into clinical practice.
So how do you do that? How do you cross that? So what do you do?
Yeah, this is what we're strategizing on right now, is trying to figure out how we do those small startups, get industry interested. Right. And a lot of things we're doing like right now, actually, one of the projects we're working on is, AI strategies, right? And if we can get enough data on infants or fetuses and so on, we can start to build models that predict not just group outcomes, but we want to get to individual outcomes, because that's what parents care about, right? So if we can get those models together, so that's what we're working on now, is trying to create these AI models that are specialized for pediatrics and hoping to do startups around that particular concept.
I have to ask one more question. Are venture capitalists interested?
I don't know, because we haven't really talked to any that I've heard about, but I think they always want something that's almost ready, so we're hoping to go
further along.
Yeah, a little bit further along.
Okay.
Can what we learn and what you understand through imaging about the brain's development be applied to how adult brains are treated?
Everything in adult life has its genesis in infants, right? So we learn a lot.
We were all there once.
Yeah, exactly. And some of the ways the adult brain responds is more prominent in a pediatric brain. So in some disorders, you go to pediatric models to see a physiologist more prominent in neonates or infants, but also occurs in adults.
You know, there was in doing the research in the prep for our interview with you, there is a picture of a physician or a therapist doing some what I think is called therapeutic hypothermia to a brand new baby's head.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that oxygen deprivation around birth is one of the leading reasons that you actually see babies come into the NICU.
Yes, that is one of the main reasons. Yes.
And the therapy for this is as simple as
you cool them down or keep them normal. Yeah, or keep them normal thermic. Because when they have injuries, the response to sort of the whole physiological response to an injury is to have a fever. And that is detrimental. So we want to keep them cool so that they don't set off these cascades of brain injury. And that's partly why we built this one device, because we want to be able to monitor through the NICU stay and optimize management. But it's interesting, we don't even know what the right blood pressure for a newborn is. So this is why we wanted to have a probe that could measure cerebral blood flow to the brain, because there is no way to monitor whether there's enough brain or oxygen getting to the brain with the tools that we have right now. I feel like we never even talk about blood pressure when it comes to like infants, right? Yeah, we just don't. But you need to know. Yeah. You did your residency and fellowship in the 1990s. Curious how imaging has changed since then. Oh my gosh. Where do you think, how will it improve in the next, I don't know, years? Yeah, what's a smart benchmark? Yeah. No, when I was in training, I was just starting, and it was very slow. So where we've come now is the acceleration acquisition is just incredible. What used to take us an hour to do, we could do in 10 minutes now. So the speed of acquisition is huge. We're also developing a lot of analysis that we can do after the images are acquired to get us more quantitative metrics. Because the whole thing is in medicine to get past the qualitative read of a radiologist, which is helpful, but we want to put more numbers on it so we can have a more dynamic range in how we describe each child. And therefore we can get into better precision medicine and outcome prediction. So we're getting more to that creative aspect of imaging now, and not just
that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Down to fetal age. Is it for kids too? Every case is very personal and individual, or are there trends and things that you can help in so that one case can help another? Like, is there a body of knowledge that gets built off of this? Yes, there's body of knowledge gets built off of this, but this is where we come back to AI. I only can remember so much, even though I've been in practice for a long time, things fall out. Right? Crap. So this is where I'm really excited about AI, because I can, mine our databases to find where's an individual child just like that one I'm treating now. Right. What did they respond to? What worked for them? And how are these two similar? So I can mine the databases to start to come up with individual outcome prediction, which is what we're doing right now with databases from some of the major trials for hypothermia. And so we can use this large database to try to take individual outcomes. You can say, well, I have a newborn with this pH that had these, and I'm a mother of this age, put in features, and then they give you from that database an outcome prediction. So working on that, and also working on making data more available to parents, because I think a lot of parents are very frustrated with trying to read the literature, even if you're using ChatGPT or OpenAI. It's really hard. And then you get group statistics. And then where does my kid fit in between the 25 to 75%, good outcome or something like that? Yeah. To get chatbots that can work with some of our databases, so anybody can talk to, a physician, so to speak, to get the answers that they want.
That's pretty remarkable, because I just think about the tone of these chatbots, and if there's a way that they can be, we talked earlier this week about what a challenge it can be for people to actually interact with them in a quote unquote normal way. But is there a way for them to actually be empathetic and work with patients, work with parents, and with families?
And we've got about 40 seconds. Yeah. No, we're working on that, but I can't tell you all the secrets because we're going to start. You can wait. No, you go longer than that. Can I ask you, when you guys use AI in chatbots, do you have a hallucination? Like, do the AI hallucinations? How do you, especially when you're dealing with medical information, there's a lot of safeguards we put around that. So we have, again, this is sort of more the secret sauce that I can't talk about yet, but there are ways to constrain chatbots to give you reasonable answers that are statistically sound.
Our thanks to Dr. Ellen Grant, Director of Fetal Neonatal Neuroimaging and Developmental Science at Boston Children's Hospital.
So I got to say, this is one of those conversations, like you just think about what these doctors are dealing with, what these patients, these very, very young patients. And Tim, you and I walked into the lobby of this hospital, and I felt like our demeanor changed. Like it was very busy, lots of families, lots of young kids, and it just, for those of us who have kids or lucky enough to have kids, you just think about what these individuals, these young individuals and their families are going through.
And also the doctors who treat them. After our visit there, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's a doctor, and I told him, I said, it was really hard for me to be there. And he said, I get it. And that's why I chose in my career to only work with adults. I can't do it.
I mean, these individuals, they're so devoted. There isn't, in comparison to R&D on adults and adult ailments and diseases, there isn't as much for kids. And this is what these guys are working on, R&D, looking for different ways to treat these kids. And so it was just hard not to be in awe of all the work that they are doing. And they're just so devoted and so upbeat about all the work that they're doing. It's not always easy, we know, for them.
Well, speaking of R&D, still ahead on Bloomberg Business Week, we're going to explore some of that R&D, cutting-edge orthopedic surgery for torn ACLs, with the orthopedic surgeon-in-chief for Boston Children's Hospital.
The magic is kind of this sponge that we've developed that can absorb the patient's blood. You can place that blood-laden sponge in between the torn ends of the ACL, sew the ACL back together, but now you have the biology plus the sutures and the repair, and the ligament will heal. This is Bloomberg.
This is New York's only 24-hour source for world markets and breaking business news. Bloomberg 1130. Coming up, the latest market-moving headlines from Bloomberg. First, an update from our partners at CBS News. CBS News Brief. Ukraine says Russian attacks continue with a drone killing at least one person tonight near Kyiv. Negotiations are due to resume this week. CBS's Elizabeth Palmer.
Serious negotiations about to get underway may well lead to a ceasefire, but until there is peace, there is still lethal war.
President Trump says you should consider the airspace over Venezuela closed. Correspondent Weijia Jiang.
For weeks, President Trump has huddled with top aides, poring over options for military operations in Venezuela. This morning, the president issued a warning impacting the sky.
A National Guard member shot and killed this past week is being remembered by friends in West Virginia. Jacob Kogar was Sarah Beckstrom's high school classmate.
If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't even pass the ninth grade. I mean, nothing but caring, loving, willing to help somebody.
Guard member Andrew Wolf remains in critical condition. CBS News Brief, I'm Peter King. And I'm in Kalegi in the